The business, from a director's point of view, has various mysterious ways and forms. And what I find now, in fact, I have for years, is deciding you better develop your own material, because the chance of something really good landing on your desk is rare. Happened to me the second time, which was Alien, came into me, I read it and thought, wow, that's pretty good. Didn't really happen until, at that time I was told, my agent actually said to me, look, there's a script from Michael and Stanley and Sherry that is called Black Rain, they'd like you to look at it, and that's how it happened. And the fact that I would be shooting in the Far East, which has always attracted me. And I'd had this liking for exotic arenas and exotic worlds, with Blade Runner, Alien, even Legend, actually. And so the idea of going to do a detective story that would take me, for the most part, into Japan was really attractive.
I have a friend who lives in Kobe, Japan, who married a Japanese woman. I went there several times, and I can't remember what trip, 87, 88. And I went there, and we were standing on a street corner, and all these large American cars went by. And I said, what are these? And he said, they're driven by Yakuza. And there were these enormous sort of Cadillacs and Buicks from the 70s and stuff. And that was it, and I didn't know what the Yakuza were. And I came back and looked them up.
Japanese mob.
Mm-hmm. Well, our victims are certainly Yakuza.
And then in sort of a flash thought, this would be an interesting film. And it came very quickly, the original idea, the simple spine of an American cop going over there for some reason to get a prisoner back or get somebody there from America or something, and then getting caught there and having to team up with a Japanese cop. And I had that idea came sort of instantaneously. And it was really the relationship between these two people from different cultures who, of course, didn't get along. And at that time, it was very much the zeitgeist of American-Japanese relationships. It was quite hostile. But I was writing another script at the time that I wanted to direct, and I wasn't sure I wanted to devote full time to this in the very beginning. And I had a friend named Julie Kirkham, who became the executive producer, who knew a young writer who had not had a produced movie named Warren Lewis.
I was doing a variety of roustabout jobs here in production and in New York in another field. And I was writing. I'd written a couple of scripts. One of them was a very New York-y crime story, which got me a little bit of attention and an agent, and got me read. And one among the people that read me was Julie Kirkham. She introduced me to Craig, who was an old friend of hers. We sat down, we worked it over, we came up with an outline, and the script came together rather quickly, as these things go. And I went on my merry way. Craig's agent met with Michael Douglas, and it sold immediately.
I just remember being at the time with the late 80s, and Japan's economy was just rolling along, and it was basically steamrolling, looked like over the United States, and there was a constant growth and a philosophy and belief. And I remember being fascinated by the change in the two cultures, and thought that this was a interesting analogy. Mind you, I had done, Wall Street a couple of years before this, and we were dealing with the issues of corruption and decadence and lack of a morality in our own culture. And I'd also then done Fatal Attraction with Sherry Lansing and Stanley Jaffe as partners. So I was looking for something to do together, and saw this and thought this was a wonderful concept.
The project was brought to us by Michael Douglas, and it happened kind of quite naturally. We were doing the press for Fatal Attraction in Europe, and we were all in Paris, and Michael said that he had this great script that he wanted us to read, and it was Black Rain. And we said, oh God, this is going to be an amazing movie, and it's going to be an incredible part for you to do. And he asked us to produce it, which was the highest flattery that we could have ever imagined, because we had already worked with him on Fatal Attraction, so that means he thought we did a good job.
When we really were ready to start making the movie and needed a director, we thought about what were the
aspects of the picture we wanted, and certainly going into this strange new world, which really hadn't been explored that much on film from American. We wanted somebody who could visually capture it, as well as had the intelligence to work with the material, because we felt if we executed it right, it was going to be a big step above just an action movie. And we met with a number of people, and we were very taken with Ridley, who really loved the script and what it potentially offered him, both visually and in terms of the character. Michael loved the idea of working with Ridley, and after a very short time, we made a decision to go with him.
To meet the three of them was intimidating, because they all sat there in silence to let you speak about what you thought about the screenplay. And like all things, the screenplay was pretty interesting enough to get me involved, but I gave my notes and said how things could be adjusted here and there. For the most part, we were generally in agreement, and then next phase is once you're through the door, then you start meeting with the writers. But because of Stanley's very close association with Paramount, we were on a really fast track, so this was going to happen, whatever happened. So even while the writing process was occurring, I was already looking at locations in Japan.
Michael Douglas took a chance on something, because it's not the most likable character for the first half of the movie. I mean, somebody else might have rewritten it and said, "Where's my scene where everybody loves me?" In the beginning of the movie, and he didn't ask for that.
You guys got a counterfeiting war going on, and you, pal, should talk to your partner before you go to the suits, okay? So fuck you very much.
I had the financial success of Fatal Attraction, got the Oscar for Wall Street, so I felt that my responsibility was to stretch myself, and I was able to do, as an actor, different types of pictures without worrying about my image. And I tended up to that point to play characters who had a gray area, who were neither heroes nor necessarily villains, people who had a moral flaw. And in Black Rain, we had a situation where my character, a police officer, feels that he's failed in pretty much all aspects of his life. He's lost his marriage. He's lost his respect as an officer. He's lost his worth.
Did you take money?
So the arc was somebody who was, I've been down so long it looks up to me, and how you gain your self-esteem and your respect.
Why should I trust you?
Because you got nothing to lose.
Well, Michael, when he's a producer, is one hat. When he's an actor, is absolutely the other hat. He forgets about being a producer and he's only the actor. And he's always looked for different characters.
Oh, baby, I've got a grip on you, honey, the rest of my life.
He wanted to break from what he was perceived at as this very intelligent, good-looking man, so he made a very real point of playing it rough-looking.
Ellen Morajic, as the costume designer, had worked on both Fatal Attraction and Wall Street. And she was persuasive in me curling my hair. I did which I'll never do again, but it was effective. It took a long time, the kind of curlers and everything else to kind of make your hair kind of curly.
The hair came about because it was in reference to how can we do the hair differently than we did in the last two movies that could be easily maintained. And there's a hipster quality that you're not quite sure, is this guy sleazy? Is he hip? There's something not quite right. And I think that part of it being off-putting, in that acceptable but off-putting, is really how it was easier to convey that. Cool cat who is not honest.
Make your side bet while you're at it. What's up, Grandpa? I'll take your Social Security. Oh, Nick, take that on the video. Ain't you gonna make it through the season, pal? Hey, fuck you, motherfucker.
Ladies of the 80s are going for shoes.
Yeah? Where'd you hear that?
I read it in a magazine. They say it's the second place they're looking.
Andy came in as the absolute counter-argument, albeit younger, not that much younger, but younger, new, fresh, enthusiastic, untouched bachelor, wasn't married. That's the difference. As soon as you get married and you have a kid, suddenly everything starts to adjust, or has to, ought to adjust. So you're seeing Michael at the beginning of his career.
We had seen Andy, obviously, in The Untouchables and also in a Hal Ashby film. And you saw this incredible naturalness. He has extraordinary likability. So that when he is killed in the movie, you can hear a gasp because the audience so likes him and they so want him to survive. And that was very, very important.
On the surface, it had a familiar genre to it, you know, in terms of the buddy cop movie and the revenge aspects of it, you know. But knowing who was involved in the picture, I knew that there was a different layer that was going to be achieved. And immediately in talking with Ridley and, you know, once I got involved in the project, I saw that it was going to have a much darker tone. And I was a fan of Michael's. So the experience making the movie was really quite extraordinary. I mean, if you want to be in the trenches on a movie, you want to be in the trenches with Michael Douglas.
He's got that wonderful Cuban-American energy. He had a great sense of humor and was a great comedic relief to some degree over in this Japanese environment.
Noodles, you're gonna hurt yourself.
I knew of Ken through Yakuza, Sidney Pollack film. We haven't seen him often in the United States. But, you know, Ken, when I'd done Black Rain, done 200 movies. So it was pretty easy to set up, and I met with him.
We'll play Ken as the first part of the end of the shot off camera.
Yeah. Over there, Charlie to Nick
becomes a target, I think, for Nick to see him first, probably.
This guy's so experienced and seems to be very sympathetic and seems to have a twinkle. Has obviously a very good sense of humor. Also is physical, because I'd seen what he can do with a sword in Yakuza.
I'm talking to you.
Ken Takakura was the silent warrior in Japanese films, and he had that quiet dignity and played these warrior parts. In our movie, we hired him to play a meek, bureaucratic Japanese police officer, and we were teamed together, and I was always going by my street instincts, and he was more of a diplomat, and basically the movie showed me learning about ritual and customs and how to conduct yourself as a human being.
Perhaps you should think less of yourself and more of your group. Try to walk like a Japanese.
And Ken was always into all these Japanese medicinal. I never knew what I was taking, but he'd have these looked like little lava balls of black goo and this and that. But I said, I had some idea how old he was and what kind of good shape he was in. So I said, I'll do whatever you can. And I think the joy for us as international actors was it really is an international language and how actors cross over all boundaries. And I really enjoyed working with them and been able to maintain contact with them off and on over the years. But he did a extraordinary performance and was so well respected not only by our crew but by all the Japanese.
Sato Koji. He started young and rose quickly, from street enforcer to minor boss.
The bad guy in movies is the character that we're always trying to paint a different picture with. And I always find the bad guy who's got some attractive sides to him makes him that much more interesting. In the same way that a hero has got a dark side to him, that makes him more interesting because somewhere in that story he's going to repair himself or try. If he tries and fails, I guess that's called a film noir, right? And I think a lot of the time I function on intuition. When somebody walks through the door, I'm usually either, it's interesting, I'm interested immediately, or no, that's not what I thought. But then they'll come in, I'll sit and talk, because I was thinking, you know, tall, blonde, and thin, what walks through the door is short, fat, and dark, and within 10 minutes, it can adjust again. You think, actually, this is really interesting. So you got to keep your mind open to, but your intuition is everything. And Matsuda, I figured that was it. It was the only one. They said, do you want to read? No, I think he's it. Matsuda was charming. I met him in Tokyo. Charming, elegant, great sense of humor, even though he didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I had to have an interpreter there who would listen to the interpreter and then in 3 seconds get it what I'm getting to. But his real talent was in comedy. So he was coming from comedy and I think very successful television comedy. And my only concern was, could he be dark?
Yusaku Matsuda was a matinee idol in Japan. Very good-looking guy, extremely tall for Japanese. He was about 6'2", spoke no English, and gambled to play this vicious villain. And I have the greatest memories for him.
He was one of the nicest people in the whole world. I mean, you would sort of be sitting on the set talking to him, and he was so sweet and warm, and then this, like, evil would come out.
He had a look about him that was well before Keanu Reeves adopted it for The Matrix. It was just a modern approach to a traditional man. So there's more of an extravagance, and it's used for intimidation, and which is very different than the everyday salarymen and everyday people that live in Japan.
You still didn't tell me how you got the blood.
The girl who found the body was just a little bit upset, so I put my arms around her, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You got a cigarette?
Sure.
The character that Kate was playing was a beautiful white woman in Japan who did made a career for herself. But she is not a courtesan. She is, in fact, her own person who has actually discovered a lifestyle there which suits her. She can support herself in a good way that she could never do if she came back to the United States. So you have an independent woman there who decides what she will do, and that he's never come across that kind of independent female before.
Up to that point, all my work had been light, and the woman that I played in Black Rain was tough as nails. He wanted tough. And I remember my agent coaching me the day before, the morning of, the afternoon, 10 minutes before, just saying, you know, he doesn't see you at all in this. And I remember, again, as an actress thinking, okay, I'm going to have to show him in my interview, not acting, that I could be that person. And that's how I went in. I went in and I had to do this practice mentally of not having such an easy smile and not laughing or making jokes, which is what I do to put myself at ease. So I had to give those things up. I remember just feeling like a big fat fake.
Okay, you see the girl down there? You give her $50 and you go where she takes you, and then I'll find you, okay?
She had to appear to be very glamorous. She was a slightly film noirish type of character. Cold, blonde, distant, and very glamorous.
I think it was really Ridley and Ellen collaborating together, because Ridley is a very visual man, and from the beginning he was very interested in playing with the way I looked. The makeup, the hair. He was specific about the haircut. He wanted it to be he called it a boy cut. It was like an English Eton, you know, the classic long here and then shorter up the back. I guess the boys stick it behind their ears. But I think there was something androgynous that he was going for, and yet with that in mind, you had Ellen, on the other hand, being probably one of the most insightful designers to sensuality I've ever worked with.
I don't know, Nikki. Something tells me we should cut our losses and let the locals handle it around here.
I can't go back without him, Charlie.
There's the document and then there's the cast. Once you get those two things together, then you're kind of literally halfway there. The rest should be fun. If the document's right, the blueprint's right, and the casting's right, the director can kind of start to really enjoy himself.
It's my dinner. It's jelly babies. Only in the United States do you get chicken sandwich and jelly babies.
But, you know, a director's meant to be dad, mum, uncle, brother, psychologist, psychiatrist, all in one. And what most people don't realize is the director needs that as well. But the problem is he's got to hide it.
Ready? Ulrich? Yes, sir. Yes, and you?